Good afternoon, good morning, buon pomeriggio, buongiorno. Welcome again to our fourth book presentation. Today we'll be presenting a DVD and a books. And there are two projects that I think they can definitely go together and talk a different aspect of silent movies. So the first one we'll be presenting today is Filibus, the mysterious air pirate. And Elif Rongen-Kaynakçi will be with us today. Hello, Elif.
Hi,
Hi,
hello.
how you doing? And thank you for being with us and joining us. Um, so let's start talking about the movie, because the movie we know and we'll be talking about, but this is even more. It's been so successful. It was successful in its time, but it's so successful now that it's been all over the place because it's something absolutely unique in as a movie, and as in the release you add more materials to prove even that better that.
Yes, I mean, this is a film that does not really look like or feel like any Italian diva melodrama from 1915. It's in fact completely opposite. It's very fresh. It's a bit of science fiction, a bit of police detective film, action film, and it's part of the Net collection. And we have the only existing print. And although it was already discovered and screened here and there since 1988, a few years ago, we kind of relaunched it, if you like, by showing it at the San Francisco Silent Film Festival. And from then on, we never looked back. It has been literally around the world a couple of times, screening in many festivals and cinemas and other events. And finally, I can say, we are now also getting the DVD and Blu-ray. It took a while, but in the meantime, yeah, Filibus was very active.
That's great. Yes, and we're very happy the Milestone and Kino got this very, very, as you were saying, very. It took a while, but everybody's waiting for, so it's gonna be great. And as you were mentioning, it's so. Let's say it's kind of double known and double effective. So in this era and back again, and in many times. So let's kind of start from the beginning of the movie. We will see a little bit of a clip of the trailer later on that just give us a glimpse of what it is, because there is a lot of things inside this movie which make it absolutely unique. As you were saying, we will expect from the Italian diva one something very canonized, something very clear. It's very easy. We can discuss what is a diva movie or not, but we really know what is a diva, or we used to, because also Filibus changed in that sense our perspective of that. So who is the protagonist of Filibus, just to start?
Mm. So Filibus is definitely, she is not a diva. She is a thief, in fact, a common thief, but also appearing as a countess, or even cross-dressing and appearing to be a man, and sometimes making flirting with women, always of course with the idea of going after their valuable things. But what I think what we should say is that Filibus is kind of a mad genius, because she also uses a lot of technology to do her crimes. She travels with a zeppelin. So from, it's a bit like Mission Impossible, I say sometimes, because she comes from the sky and descends from the sky to do her theft, and she drives the detective Kutanvi crazy, because she's using cutting edge technology. Because detective also uses cutting edge technology, to be fair, but she is always just one step before him, and also she's definitely a master in disguise. What I find funny is that I don't know if you all watched it, but over the last year, when we were all sitting home, Netflix released the new version of Arsène Lupin,
Yes.
series, where there too, I mean, like the main importance about the Lupin character, even is this updated version of Netflix, is the ability to disguise and surprise people, and people never recognize the thief, because the thief always appears in a different guise. And that's exactly what Filibus is doing too.
Yeah, and then I mean that connect also to the screenings we have today of the two Italians movie. The one, the Giglio Nero, which connect a lot of technology as well, not as Filibus, but still some. And there was in the first one we screened the Purple Mask as well, used a lot, and disguise in the Giglio Nero, which it was also very interesting and original. So it's a great combination. And on the other hand, we have the Carmine Gallone movie, which is the diva and the melodrama as we are used to. While in this time, yes, it's kind of saying, oh, if it is more the main character is more male, there is all this technology or thriller wise, while the woman still respective and the diva were absolutely something unique. The Italian divas, they were different to all the female character we know before. Still, they were binded to some kind of sort. We're in Filibus, no, absolutely. As you were saying, she's a thief. She's very much proactive, and definitely the movie is around that. And the combination of the element of technology is absolutely new but original.
But in fact, Filibus is also like a really athletic character now.
Mhm.
She jumps from the cars and things like this, or climbs the ladder,
Yeah.
the rope ladder, this kind of thing. So yeah, it is very active. In general, for those who haven't seen the film, definitely feels a bit like these Fantomas series, this fantasy, the thieves and
Exactly.
the gangs. And here we are seeing now, the how Filibus changes her
Absolutely.
looks, let's say, to
Yeah,
deceive people.
I think that what we are just seeing now is quintessential because there is a lot, so much perspective to be looking at the movie, and the cross dressing, for example, is one that is particularly striking because, as we know from many scholars, Laura Horak and others, there was a lot of cross dressing, but in this movie is for the purpose of the trailer effect, the thrilling effect. Sorry, and which was used, as you were mentioning exactly. I was thinking the same, and Fantomas, but it was all again always for male, which usually are as other male. They're rarely there is, but not in this combination. Because this thing was using in another sense. I was saying, well, this is using as and is functional to this kind of story, so it is particularly striking.
No, and in fact, I think it's really cunning because the detective, we are following the story sometimes. I mean, we're following the story with some knowledge because although it's like called the mysterious, and in all these posters and so on, there's this mystery effect, like who is Filibus and so on. But actually, when the film opens, the audience is immediately told who Filibus is. So we
Yes,
all know immediately this
true.
is a woman and so on. But the detective doesn't know anything. So he's a bit, in the disadvantaged position. And
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of fun for us also as the
Yeah.
audience, because we know actually she's a woman. But the detective, even if he finds out that this is a person who is disguised, maybe put on a mask, put on even a false beard also, he still thinks it's a man who is in disguise and
Yeah.
never really comes to the discovery that actually it's a woman in disguise. Therefore, when he meets the countess, he
Mhm.
doesn't think this can be the thief, the countess is a
Absolutely, yes.
woman,
I
really.
mean, nobody would expect. Who wouldn't thought? So no, it is absolutely genial. And as we were talking about technology as well, because he said also in the presentation how it's basically is a steampunk movie and in general culture that we can find so that is popular now, that was popular sometimes, but that kind of connection also is very interesting because it's not only the technology, it's the way how she dressed to to present herself as, and the kind of use of technology and how to show and to screen it, which was particularly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's relevant to say that it is all based on the ideas by Giovanni Bertinetti, the writer, the science fiction writer also from Italy, whose ideas were quite influential. He was very interested, in aviation in general, and but also with the science fiction ideas. So it is using a lot of these things that were obviously very fashionable at the time. If you look at the film, in there are things like fingerprint reading and spy
Mhm.
cameras and so on. And these are all things that to us today, they might sound modern in the crime scene investigation and so on, but actually at that time that was really like fantastic. It was being used as big novelties and so on. So in that sense, it is very much just like Arsène Lupin, indeed, like the books by Maurice Leblanc and so on, they are from 1907, 1908. And I have to say that it was great that Denis Doros and Amy Heller of Milestone, they were completely into this aspect of the film, and they did a lot of effort also. For example, in reconstructing the intertitles,
Mhm.
to not only to choose a nice looking font of that time, but also really to choose like the words, the terminology of
Mhm.
those novels, let's say, that were very popular around the turn of the century or in the first 10 years of the 20th century. So I have to say that we improved the film in that sense. In 1988, the film was screened. Of course, our print, has the Dutch intertitles. Actually, back then already we had done an English version, but the translation was kind of, it didn't flow well. It was very literal translation from the Dutch. Original titles don't exist. Whereas now, thanks to Milestone, the new translation really reads like a Arsène Lupin novel. It uses that
Mhm.
kind of terminology, words
Yes.
that people would be using around that time. So that is definitely a really good improvement, I would say.
And to go in, and then we could also talk of the extra, of course, but you were saying that one of the first step was definitely to recognize her, so her as an actress, and how how you got to that was particularly interesting as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, I have to say, although we took our time to get the DVD finally out there, that time was spent well.
Mhm.
Again, thanks to Milestone, never-ending energy, but also a lot of people that I cannot mention now here one by one, but they are all mentioned in DVD and Blu-ray. There was a lot of information missing when we started out, so there was lots of research done. But one of the main things is that we discovered that there was a big mistake about the cost information, because
Mm.
it always said Filibus, and then there was the name of Ruspoli, Christina Ruspoli, and everybody thought, okay, so she must be Filibus. But just looking closely at pictures, we could actually tell no, because the actress is much, skinny, tiny, shorter, and so we started to doubt this. And David Emery, for one of our interns back then, he started looking at all the pictures, and here you're seeing now. Actually, we found out that the actress is Valeria Creti. So
Mhm.
in many sources, it says Filibus is Ruspoli, but actually it's Valeria Creti. And then once we realized this, we had to also like prove how we know this. And that's also so fascinating to me, because the proof was always, as always, almost in our own collection. You are seeing here one image from Filibus, and the
Mhm.
other image is from another film by Corona Film also,
Mhm.
and it's called Signori Giurati. And in Filibus, we don't have the announcing of the names. That part is
Mhm.
missing, so we never knew any name of the actors.
Mhm.
But in Signori Giurati, we do have the credits in the beginning, and it says very clearly Valeria Creti in this role in this film. And actually, she has a minor role in that film,
Mhm.
but still, and she's announced. So that was really great. And
Mhm.
as a result of this, for example, we also decided to include Signori Giurati as one of the
Mhm.
bonuses on the DVD. Yeah, here you're seeing that
Marvelous.
introduction.
Uh-huh.
And they misspelled the name, no? Instead of with
Mhm.
the C, Creti,
Creating,
they wrote
creating.
Greti. But still, it is the same woman, obviously. And
Mhm.
also, she was working with Corona Company, this company that produced both films. But so we thought, yeah, let's also include this entire future film called Signori Giurati, which is really also very interesting in itself. It's also a very interesting story. But also as to convince everybody that this
Yes.
identification is not now correct, because
Mhm.
if you look at written books, published books over the last decades, you might still think that Ruspoli
Yes.
is playing Filibus, but really this is definitely now unmasked. And I find it very strange because it's like Filibus still playing a trick on us 100 years later,
Exactly.
masking this,
That you would have thought that she would have benefit from all this, success and so, but apparently, who knows why, but not much, because even if her name, she's the main character. I mean, the movie cannot
yeah.
exist without her, and yet.
No, Valeria Creti is very, very mysterious
Mhm.
actress, I have to say. About her, we should still do more research. I mean, at a certain point, we have to stop and actually bring out the DVD, obviously, but
Yes.
there is more research needed. We don't know much about her. But still, really, I find it fascinating that this kind of almost like, again, being in disguise, hiding your real identity, played even on us in
Yeah.
doing this research. And also, by the way, I have to say, it
Mhm.
was, of course, doing research from different aspects. And we also identified locations, because there is also this question, where is this film shot? Where are these locations that we're seeing? Who are the other actors? Because in fact, Ruspoli was the only one. Oh yeah, that I didn't tell, because not only this was a misunderstanding, I think it was a misunderstanding actually, because Ruspoli is also in the film. The
Ah,
only thing that she is not Filibus, she is the
yeah.
sister. She
Ah,
is the detective's sister. So it was not even a mistake in that sense,
yeah.
because yes, she is one of the people in the film, but she was the only name known about this film, which is also very strange, no?
It is strange. It is quite strange. As again, in the image that passed before, you also had, there was another review, if I'm not mistaken, it came out in Turkey, that you find. So it means how popular it was, and you were
Yeah.
saying that it was also basically saying it was so popular they want to see it again. Here we go.
Yes,
Thank you.
this one. This is
Yeah.
this is a newspaper clip from Constantinople, from Istanbul in 1915, and it's thanks to the researcher Arda Odabaşı who provided this to us. It is amazing because, first of all, even to have a film frame in the newspaper in 1915 in Constantinople is very unusual. And also in the announcement, it says, thanks to, or due to the public demand, we will be showing Filibus again. So not only it was released in the Ottoman capital, but it was really popular too. And this was one of the questions that we had, because of course the only existing print is found in Netherlands in the Desmet collection. It shows that it was also distributed into the Netherlands at least. But even so, if this was worldwide distributed, why is there so few information? I mean, it's really,
Yes,
really hard to
information
find.
and
But but then the odds of finding this newspaper clip from Istanbul, of course, was really very, very strange, but lovely to see. Yeah.
to going back to the extra materials that will be in the DVD, which by the way will be released October 12th. So just everybody
You
can
can
get ready.
already pre-order by going onto the Kino
Yes,
website.
yes. So what other extra content they will find in the DVDs?
Yes, what we did is, since this film is from the Desmet collection, we also created a program, because
Mhm,
we have in the Desmet company archives also logs, let's say, of
mhm,
how Desmet was renting out the films. He was never renting out one film; he was renting out a set of films. So
mhm.
also with the
Yes.
newsreel, and with the comedies, with the shorts and the documentaries. So about Filibus, or around Filibus, we have several sets, let's say,
Mm,
and but some of the films have gone missing in the time. But what
mhm.
we did is I kind of recreated a program from one of the Dutch theaters, like we can have the exact date. Uh, this is to kind of duplicate or
Mhm.
simulate how this film was shown, like sandwich between
Yeah.
documentary and the newsreel and so on. And it was interesting because in this case, the documentary, let's say, on that program is Rapallo. So also showing
Ah,
Italian,
connect.
very,
Yeah.
scenic Italian town.
Very
So
popular as in
Rapallo,
the times. Extremely popular in that time.
yeah, yeah, and also I mean, like speaks to the Filibus
Yeah,
setting,
exactly.
So what we have is a news item
Mhm,
from that year, of course, also showing things about the First World War and so on that
mhm,
was on, and then documentary Rapallo, And we also have the two comedies. One is French comedies, actually. One is Onésime et la toilette de Mademoiselle Bodinois,
Mhm.
and the other is Amour et Science. This is a film that the speaker after me, Katharina, knows very well, and she
Yeah.
analyzed it also.
Nice.
And
See?
so now she can also get it on the Filibus DVD. So there's of course music for all these bonus tracks that is newly recorded.
Ah, yes.
Um, yeah, I want to mention
Something
for Filibus.
exactly. That's something, Max, I wanna to ask you is exactly that. Please go on.
Yeah, for Filibus, actually, we have two alternative scores. One
Mhm.
is by Montalto Motion Picture Orchestra. This is actually how we rewatched it, if you like, in San Francisco. So they did it live there, and that score got then recorded for the DVD. But there's also an alternative score by Donald Sozin and Joanna Seaton. So, the viewers can choose or watch the film twice with each track. And for all the other bonus tracks, like Signor Giurati, which is a feature film in itself, and these shorts that I was talking about, there's also music by Donald Sozin. And all
Mhm.
of this is like completely new, produced for this release.
Yeah, it's really a full package as you were describing because there is all the movies that go as a program, so that's even really perfect. If I'm not mistaken, because we keep on saying DVD, but this will be DVD and Blu-ray. Am I
Yes,
right?
DVD or Blu-ray, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important for I know it's there's two big different schools. Somebody who didn't want to know what the Blu-ray is, which I understand, and some others say I have a Blu-ray, I want the Blu-rays obsessively. So that
Yes,
was
in the Netherlands, Blu-ray is not too big, so that's why I'm also used to say DVD all the
yes,
time.
yes,
But I
yes,
think I'm hoping that in general the image quality will also not disappoint because
yes.
what I wanted to say is that the film has many colors for those who have seen it. It's tinted, but also tinted and toned, and of course there are these effects. Maybe you have seen some of the frame grabs also when she's up in the skies and so on. There are these two colors, tinting, toning combinations, and in fact some very very bright yellows and greens, so bright that in the former restorations, when we looked at them on the digital scans and screens, it looked
Too
like
much.
very strange. It was almost like neon, and all of this have been regraded, checked,
Mhm.
controlled again against night days, which we still of course have. My colleague Anke Kroos did a lot of double checking, working, regrading on it. And so that's also something that we're really happy about because this old analog restoration that we were showing on 35
Mm,
had some color problems.
mm.
If one color was okay, then the next scene maybe the color was a bit off and so on. And of course, now with digital, we can at least concentrate on every scene.
Yeah. You were mentioning about the Italian location as well. There was something that you were able to identify, right? That's why you were talking about also the connection with the other the other shorts there that goes with the movie.
Yeah, I mean the production company is Corona Films from Torino. Again, a company that we don't know much about. Of course, the name Corona now has totally different connotations for everyone.
Yeah, I don't know. It can be reused again. Right now, it's not a great time to call.
And back then, I don't know how successful they were. I think Marcello Sereni did great research about this, so he knows much better than I do.
Mhm.
But at a certain point, I think the company was bought by Pittaluga or one of the major
Mhm.
producers,
Indeed,
and
but,
so
yeah, makes
yeah, so
sense.
basically finished
As a big
existing.
adventure as it was, most of the beginning of Cinema Italian production company was small venture made with money from aristocracy of high money, and they were lasting some. Although this is a big production, actually, with all the effects and everything, it's there was a lot of money involved for sure.
I mean, I don't know how much money, but they definitely had lots of ambition. I don't know
Yes.
if it was translated into money immediately, but
Yeah.
definitely, but they didn't have any lack of ambition. And
Mhm.
again, I think Marcello's mainly research shows that they were actually, they wanted to do this as a big serial probably.
Yeah.
The very first advertisements kind of suggest that this might become a big serial, but I
Mhm.
think we think, oh, in the end it didn't happen at a
Mhm.
certain point, maybe because Italy went into war or something like that.
Yeah,
They
that's
had to
true.
kind of stop and repackage this, let's say. But definitely there
Also,
is
you
talk
were
of that.
saying that the original idea you think it might have been there, and then you have to readapt, and maybe they were influenced by saying by the Fantomas and others,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, obviously. These phantomas and so were very popular everywhere, but also in Italy. And I think they wanted to, kind of cash in on that kind of
yes.
serial appeal. And definitely in the very first announcements, in not only in Italy, I think in other countries too, they're
Mhm.
suggesting like episodes. Next episode
Ah,
will be about, but there are no episodes. And when they're saying the next episode will be the eyes of the Egyptian cat, that
mhm,
story is integrated in the Filibus as we
mhm.
see it. It's not
I
the
see.
next episode. So I
Yeah.
think they were preparing, thinking of this
It-
in episodes, but then they kind of integrated everything into one story.
mhm,
We might be missing, I don't know, it's hard to tell, but already it makes a lot of sense the way the film is, but
mhm,
it also has an open ending. So
mhm,
when people watch the film and they come out of it, and usually they are very enthusiastic and they want to see more of Filibus, and they are left with the feeling that they can see more
mhm.
Filibus because of the open end. She doesn't die. I mean, that's not a spoiler, so I can tell. So many people come to me and say, "Oh, do you think there will be more Filibus? Can you find more episodes and so?" I doubt if it was ever shot.
You
Actually, I
ever
think
done?
this is what was done. I want to stress the fact that if you are curious and want to read about all these new identifications and the research and so on, I would strongly advise everybody to go to the Milestone Films website and
Yes.
download the PDF press
Yes.
kit. It's like
Yes.
40 pages and it's like
Yeah.
full of information. It should be
Yes.
actually published as a book or something because this
Yeah.
tells you
I mean,
really enough.
yeah, well, I was reading in that as well for this, and just the starting is very amazing how the name Filibus come, and they do a very um, interesting. It's very well written how that come from.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also, I guess it's Emmy Heller's who we need to thank. She went back and read in the newspapers of the turn of the century of 1905, 1910, and
Mhm.
she actually found that there were many accounts of real life hotel thieves, no? So, and these were indeed people or casino thieves. So they were people pretending to be rich and, moved
Yes.
with the jet set society in Monte Carlo and Nice and so on, and then in the end they ended up at night, going, they were called like mouse hotel
Yes.
mouse and things like this. So all of these references from the newspapers of the time are also now part of that press kit, because we really think that all these things were kind of in the popular imagination of people
Yeah.
like to read about these
Yes.
glamorous stories. Also there's a bit of a Robin Hood, no?
Yes.
This simple woman
Mhm.
who just socializes with the jet sets in Monte
Yeah.
Carlo, and then at night goes and steals their jewelry. Kind of stories appeal to the people, and I'm sure that was a source of inspiration for Filibus as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And again, it's so striking, thinking could it be a series? Of course, we would have wished to have more. Maybe if it would be a series, also we would have known from before. But still, it's such a unique movie, and to have it the luxury really to put in as much in content as we can. It's really spectacular. So, Elif, thank you very much. And yeah, we have to wait for not that much for the 12th to have it
Yes,
released.
yes. We waited like for 3 years or so.
Yes,
Now we can still wait for a few more days, and
exactly.
precisely
With
it
all
can already be ordered. So.
exactly with the movies. So the program and all the beautiful music that is in, it's really gonna be something to not be missed. So thank you very much, Elif, for that.
Thank you, Paolo, for this talk.
And we move to our second presentation today. Now we're going back to a book, although that is very connected, as already Elif was mentioning, to what we will be talking. So it is a very special book because it focuses on special effects in German silent film. And it is original in exactly because of that. I would say it's we are very happy to be presenting something that goes deep into technical, but with clear reference of very known movies that we also have screened at the Giornate, but looking and investigating the relationship between the two things. So we have Katharina Loew with us. Hello, Katharina.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So as I was saying, we were very, very happy to see the release of this book because again, it focused on something on aspect, and we are particularly fond of the technical aspect of movies, among others, of course, and especially when we feel there's not too much publication or even books about it yet. There are a few, of course, there is a lot. But this, it's particularly fascinating because it's about a moment in silent German cinema, to which, as we were saying today, the Collegium actually, some of these movies are very well known and particularly now very much studied. But this is the original angle that we really appreciate. So, can you talk us a little bit about it?
Yeah, thank you so much. So the book is entitled Special Effects in German Silent Film, Techno-Romantic Cinema. So what do I mean by techno-romantic? Cinema, of course, is a child of the machine age, and a mix of anxiety and excitement about machine technology is one of the key characteristics of early cinema in general. And in this book, I look specifically at the ways that German silent cinema was shaped by this ambivalent or paradoxical attitude towards machine technology. What I call techno-romantic describes a tendency to understand technology as a means to get at something intangible or spiritual. The attempt to reconfigure technology, which was feared for its dehumanizing effects, as something that would highlight or strengthen something essentially human. In the context of art, industrialization, and specifically machine technology, it represented a huge problem. All art needs to evoke concepts and sensation and the imaginary and elicit effective responses. And technology was seen as exactly the opposite of all these things. So as a medium of the machine age, cinema had to meet the stipulation of idealist aesthetics and do so in a way that was medium specific. So medium specific expressivity was identified in the realm of special effects. And this book seeks to emphasize a perspective on special effects that looks at them as artistic devices. I will walk you through the chapters fairly quickly. In chapter, this was still some images on machine technology, etc., and how. Yes, exactly.
But also the movies. So yeah,
that's
to
right.
emphasize what you were just saying, the connection with technology.
Exactly. So in chapter 1, I look at the ways that early film theorists look at and discussed cinema at the earliest stages, basically starting in 1907. And in an attempt to establish cinema as an art, early critics identified two areas that were thought of as uniquely cinematic. So this is the question of medium specificity. On the one hand, films of nature, but of course, nature had the problem that they were identified also as automatic reproduction of material reality, and people thought that this really clearly lacked creativity, which was important for art. But on the other hand, we had trick films, and trick films were recognized as something creative And therefore, early on, people saw that there might be the kernel for getting at something artistic, pulling out cinema's artistic potential. So early critics argued for cinema's ontological affinity with folk art, mental processes, and the fantastic, and saw special effects as cinema's key pathway to a spiritual dimension. In chapter 2, I look at the work of Guido Seeber, who was one of the most important early German cinematographers. He had a huge impact on the artistic and technological development of German cinema. He not only experimented with technology, as technologies including moving camera relatively early on, at least in the German context, and he was very proud of his technological experiments. As a publicist, he distributed know-how and prestige of technology within. We're already seeing images about the next guy, Eugen Schiftern, but that's fine. As a publicist, Guido Seeber distributed know-how in the German film industry and also upped the prestige of technology, which was seen somewhat critically in the beginning of maybe in the 19-teens in Germany still. And Seeber's work really changed that, and there was developed a strong pride in technology in the German context. The other person I look at in this chapter is Eugen Schiftern, who is best known for his work as cinematographer and as a trick technician. He invented the Schiftern process, of which we see an instance right here from the Nibelungen. The Schiftern process is a compositing process that works with mirrors and models, reprojection, other still low in motion, and lenses. It's quite complex. We usually know only sort of the most basic applications of the Schiftern process, but Schiftern took out like 40 patents on this idea. And as we just saw in the example from Siegfried, there's also movement possible, like so the gradual transformation of the dwarfs from human beings to stone can be shown like bit by bit rather than superimposed as it would have been done traditionally. Okay, then moving on to the third chapter that looks at the Student of Prague, which Guido Seeber was involved in as a cinematographer. This film was created by Deutsche Bioskop, collaboration of the Scandal author Hans-Heinz Evers, the actor Paul Wegener, the Danish director Stellan Rie, and Guido Seeber, as I mentioned. And the goal of these people was to show that film art was actually feasible. That was the stated goal, particularly of Hans-Heinz Evers. And they attempted to combine the medium's unique areas of strength, location shots, as I mentioned, and trick effects in order to capture something in the immaterial realm. In the Student of Prague, trick effects facilitate the cinematic treatment of the doppelganger motive, which allows for a range of interpretations, particularly philosophical, psychological reflection of identity and the self. And the film demonstrated that the medium film was capable of capturing complex ideas on film. So there's like the confrontation between the doppelganger and the location shots show that the monster, like a supernatural monster, basically, potentially supernatural, potentially psychological monster, intruding into an actual environment, which also elicited viewer responses that were rare still in 1913. So the origins of the horror film, if we want, that creates fear in the audience when they watch it. Okay, moving on to chapter 4. Here I look at the connections between film and occultism, which are still fairly underexplored in film studies. Unlike in literature and in art history, where occultism has been researched quite substantially in recent decades. The occult is the belief that there are secret realities beyond our perceptual capacities. Occultists propose themselves as, or propose occultism as an alternative to rationalism, to mechanization, to secularization, and promise a metaphysical reframing of the world from a holistic and non-normative perspective. The creators of Nosferatu all had occultist interests. Albin Grau, the producer and set designer, was a fairly prominent occultist. Also, Henrik Galeen, the scriptwriter, and Murnau had strong occultist interests. And even though the film contains few obviously occultist symbols, it can be read productively as an articulation of occultist ideas in a medium specific, that is like a technological and artistic way. The film tries to make invisible forces and realities perceptible by means of special effects, and it seeks to externalize the vampire's nature conceived according to occultist ideas. But at the same time, special effects are only one way in which Nosferatu is concerned with hidden forces, and the film also hints at analogies between nature and people, forces, spiritual phenomenon, etc., etc. So it's a little bit of a coveted propaganda film for occultism, but it can also be read without any knowledge of occultism altogether, which is quite interesting. Then we come to chapter 5, Metropolis. Here I was particularly interested in this tension between technology being represented as an agent of tyranny and dehumanization. And at the same time, the film is this technological marvel, and technology is celebrated as a spectacle. The spectacle is both malicious and marvelous at the same time. And as we see in the clip from Metropolis, that shows the creation of or the changing of Maria's of the robot into Maria's face or body. Special effects facilitate in Metropolis encounters with overpowering technological environments. So we can think of this, as I do in the book, in terms of a technological sublime. The sublime describes experiences beyond the earthly and finite, and in Metropolis, special effects serve to capture this technology as sort of something unfathomable, that is just so mind-blowing that it exceeds all our perceptive and rational capacities, as you see here. Yes, I'm just going to let this play for the... Yes. And then finally, chapter 6 looks at moving camera feeds and extreme camera angles as medium-specific and expressive devices, and as a special effect, which is not like normally something we think about, moving camera and camera angles as a special effect. But in fact, this is something that was actually perceived at the time often, that effects are actually effects, and they were specially created, not like beyond the normal production schedule. So I look at the so-called unchained camera and also at the so-called trick angles, as they were known in Hollywood at the time, and particularly the fact that Hollywood invited German directors around 1926 to demonstrate German tricks as they were understood. this aims at reframing our understanding of what is sometimes has been described as a technical influence of German cinema on Hollywood. And I think this is more complicated than just saying Hollywood imported certain techniques.
Yeah.
What I try to show is that by importing these directors rather than technicians, which is important to recognize, the camera's role was rethought of in Hollywood, at least in part, in shaping the narrative discourse and audience address, and using the camera as a means to represent ideas and feelings and immerse viewers emotionally. This is what I would say Hollywood took from the German directors rather than simply import specific techniques. And then the conclusion looks at how we might think of the techno-romantic paradigm today, because I think it's still with us. It's not a silent phenomenon. It's not a German phenomenon at all. And it also prompts us to think about special effects in terms of an expressive use of special effects that is not that has been a little bit left aside in the discourse that looks mostly at, or has been looking mostly at, spectacles and practical special effects rather than as a cinematic device. So that's it. That's a brief overview over the book.
That sounds great. Yeah. So I have a few questions since we have a little bit more time. And well, the first, probably the most obvious but needed. Which were your sources for finding all this? All the photos that we saw are on the books, and of course there is more. But how was it you found them, or the way you were looking at?
That's a great question. I looked a lot at contemporary press, trade press, and also general press. I looked at patents quite a bit, and then whatever was available at archives, which is oftentimes fairly thin in terms of film technology. But UFA has, for example, had this collaboration with Schüchtern. They created a joint company, the Spiegeltechnik GmbH, and there are papers that survive and talk about how UFA was thinking about the Schüchtern process and how they invested a lot of money in this and then didn't use it properly and so on and so forth. So yes, those are among the main sources I think that come to mind right now.
And I'm going to jump a little bit through the chapters. The one devoted to occultism is particularly fascinating because it is something that, as you were mentioning, we do not consider as is, in the sense of yes, we I think as every audience will recognize in that, in the Golem, in Nosferatu, and in others German movie of the time, how many of these elements were. Although we always think they were functional to the story, which is true, but they come from a background that is deeper than that. And that's particularly interesting, I would say. So I was wondering, what was the first things that got you realize that, or how were your thoughts got together? No.
Yeah, I think what fascinated me is that the discussion about technology, because there's like this strong sense of like this really strong interest in technology on the one hand, but this really also anxiety about the dehumanizing qualities of technology that we, modernity in general, we lose our humanities because of technology. And I think that this discourse is still ongoing right now, but it really struck me that also the German filmmakers were so interested in technology and using technology at the same time. The topics are oftentimes like very ambivalent. It's not like celebrating technology without without a second guess. So this tension, I thought, was extremely interesting. And the more you dig into this, the more you see, of course, that what has been in the past described sort of as a fascination with modernity was not just like celebrating modernity. It was that, but it was also very anxiety laced.
That's particularly fascinating. And so as we were talking, you were mentioning for the Hollywood part, of course, but not only the fact that they were importing not the technician, more the directors, therefore their view on the technology, the effects and the technology. So how many traces you find of the directors really deeply connected in the technology, in the effect that and the technology of the effect to reproduce what they wanted to?
Interesting, because I thought that they would have been interested in techniques. That's sort of the conventional view, right? But the Hollywood studios really in 1926 got close to 10 German directors to Hollywood, but no technicians. And so what were the directors supposed to do? That's what I try to answer. And I think that they were supposed to do two things. One is sort of create films that were internationally attractive, strengthen Hollywood's international appeal, and do so with the knowledge of these the films that were going well in Europe, if you want, European topics, historical topics, etc., etc. But then also look at how can we use film technology to do something. And the German commentators were always saying that Hollywood is so boring, like you can make there's no style to Hollywood films. They say Ben-Hur, for example, could have been just as well been the style for a Buster Keaton film. There's no difference between, and you need to somehow bring out the soul of the film through style. And so I think what the Hollywood studios were interested in is having the directors tell the technicians, which they thought were the best in the world, to do something to bring out certain expressive buzzes.
Yeah, because that's the thing that strikes me of all the movies. Moreover, just a few movies you were mentioning is that they're all completely different, even though they all use very heavy, complicated effects, which is interesting. By the look of it, we can, especially some of them, of course, recognize them so easily, even from clips when there is, for example, the Nosferatu. Even if there is not Nosferatu in the scene, we know it's Nosferatu.
That's right. Exactly.
And it's exactly because of that, the kind of such, as you were saying, soul and the fact that it was recognized is so. I understand that we're looking for Hollywood, and it's particularly interesting in that. And going back also to the title that you choose, the Techno-Romantic Cinema, is very interesting because, again, you spotted the fact that there was a discussion. I mean, in Metropolis, it might be even more clear and loud about technology, the relation with technology. Although to emphasize and to make it, Fritz Lang created basically this universe of technology, which is unbelievably, today is needless to say, but even at the time, shockingly important, but in many others too. So can you tell us a little bit more about the definition of techno-romantic?
Yes, absolutely. So the idea is that these people who were making these films at the time, or were shaping the discourse, also they were not just filmmakers, but also, of course, authors and publicists and so on and so forth, that were very much committed to idealist principles, particularly idealist principles of art. So there was, and I think that they felt that there was that the progress of technologization, of industrialization, was really threatening to to humanity. And so the interest in like trying to make the most out of this new world, basically shaping, using the new tools to in order to further what they thought was important, namely art, namely humanity, namely so it creates a really interesting tension, I think, that cannot just be understood as conservative or progressive. And I think the discourse about modernity in cinema has often been shaped in terms of that, that either somebody is reactionary or somebody is loves technology, right? And what I wanted to show is that this is more complicated than that, and that you find techno-romantic tendencies across the political spectrum, that the anxiety about technology and the fascination with technology is very widespread, and can be really found in and I think it's not limited to German cinema at all. In fact, that's what I looked at, and that's the discourse was very obvious to me. But I'm certain that if one would look, that you could find very similar things in French cinema, in Italian cinema for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when we were talking about Filibus, for example. The use of technology is very heavy, but it's on purpose, on the purpose of the movie, but with a view that is very still interesting and new, because it's almost a fantastic technology, therefore out of the realm of fantasy. So yes, that would be that was exactly my comment. Next comment is like, why? I mean, I understand why you focus on German, but if you thought there would be more to be looking in other cinemas, and so you think you're going to expand your research in that sense, or you don't know yet?
I think I'm going to continue looking at special effects in terms as a cinematic device, beyond sort of like the book started from like interest in the fantastic, but I think where I want to go is like looking at special effects as a cinematic device that is like sort of decoupled from a specific genre or a specific narrative, but rather looking at special effects as a eye-catching moment, and in a film that is unrelated of narrative. So this is where I want to go. Split screen effects in particular, and superimposition effects.
That sounds great. So I want to thank you again, Katharina, to be with us. And
thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy and pleasure, and I'm so happy and proud to be part of this program. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and we hope to see you again in Portona next year.
Yes, I will be there. I'm looking forward to it so much.
That's excellent. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Last note today, we really want to mention a book that is not out yet, but it will be, and it's by our Geometry Award. J.B. Kaufman is, here we go, Kaufman at the Movies. It's an upcoming book of Greenview Press that will be coming soon, most closely between the end of the year and the beginning of the year. And there is some essays and articles from J.B. Kaufman. So some even appeared on Graffitiana, and some, for example, as we're seeing now, from the Footloose Widows, the one we screened in the Giornata in Sacile. But there's going to be even more new essays, completely brand new. So we will be very excited, and for sure we will be presenting the book here in our book presentation next year. But we want to start launching this upcoming book that we really care for. So thank you very much for following us today, and we'll see you tomorrow for our next book presentation. So have a nice afternoon or morning, or according to your time. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.